The moment I signed those acquisition papers on the long oak table in that freezing, glass-walled, luxurious San Francisco boardroom, I felt absolutely no nervousness inside. The room was dead silent. Only the ticking of an old wall clock and the scratching of my expensive fountain pen against the pages echoed in the air. Right across the table sat my ex-fiancé, David. He was pale as a ghost, his eyes reflecting the sheer terror of a man watching his entire world collapse before him. My hands didn't tremble, my heart held no regrets, and I wasn't in any rush. My pen glided over those pages just as steadily as it did on my everyday accounting spreadsheets, precise, controlled, and without a hint of hesitation. Beads of sweat glistened on David's forehead. His breathing was heavy, and his eyes darted frantically between my hands and the legal documents. He was probably hoping I would scream at him, taunt him, or perhaps halt the deal, out of some lingering nostalgia, before signing on the dotted line. But my face remained a mask of ice-cold composure. Only one memory echoed in my mind. How, exactly 6 months ago, he had ruthlessly humiliated me in an upscale Manhattan restaurant, putting me in my place. He had dumped me for a girl whose bank account was much larger than mine. He thought he had effortlessly trampled over my years of hard work and shown me my true worth. Little did he know that the very company I had poured my blood, sweat, and sleepless nights into building would one day have its fate sealed by my hands. People often assume that betrayal breaks a person, plunges them into depression, and destroys their life, but very few understand what a woman is truly capable of when she turns her tears into her strength and weaponizes her pain. I come from a very modest family in Ohio. My father worked in a small factory, and my mother was a seamstress. From a young age, I learned the true value of money, the worth of every single dollar, and the price of hard work. I paid my own way through college by juggling 2 jobs. When I moved to an expensive city like San Francisco, all I had was my brain and my sheer stubbornness to outwork everyone else. Working day and night, I carved out a place for myself at a top-tier Wall Street private equity firm. When I first met David, he was just an ambitious guy with a tech startup idea. But he had no concrete plan, no experience, and absolutely no money to turn it into reality. He would sit in cafes, making big, empty promises, but when it came to actually getting the business off the ground, he was completely clueless. I believed in him. I thought we could build an empire together. For 3 consecutive years, I dedicated all my after-work hours and every single weekend to building his company's entire financial framework. I worked my day job at the firm, and by night, I drafted investor pitches, wrote business plans, and kept track of every single penny for David's startup. I did everything for his company for free, the exact same work a high-end consulting firm would charge millions for. We were engaged, and I saw my entire future with him. I had even poured all my life savings into his business. I genuinely believed we were a team, that his victory was my victory. But David was always hungry for shortcuts. He loved fame, expensive suits, and showing off more than he loved hard work. To him, true success meant rubbing shoulders with the elite at lavish parties and taking pictures with influential people. He had absolutely no respect for my sleepless nights or my sacrifices. I still remember that December evening vividly. It was the coldest and most horrific night of my life. A heavy snowstorm was raging outside, the biting wind chilling me to the bone. David had invited me to dinner at the city's most exclusive and luxurious Italian restaurant, a place that required reservations months in advance. When I heard the name of the restaurant, my heart fluttered with excitement. I thought maybe tonight was the night. We'd finally set a wedding date. Or perhaps the company had landed a massive deal. He wanted to celebrate. I wore my best dress, one I had bought years ago, and saved for a special occasion. But when I arrived, He wasn't alone. He was seated at the best, most private corner table, and right next to him sat a stunningly beautiful girl. She was draped, head to toe, in thousands of dollars worth of designer clothes. A genuine diamond necklace sparkled around her neck, and the watch on her wrist probably cost more than what I'd make in a lifetime. Her name was Chloe, and she was the only daughter of the billionaire investor who was about to pump the most money into David's company. When I walked up to them, there was no joy, no warmth, not even a trace of guilt on David's face. He looked at me with a cold, unfamiliar stare. Trembling, I asked, "What is all this, David?" That's when David, in the most ruthless and blunt manner, said, "Emily, I need someone who can keep up with my new status. My company is about to blow up, and I need to move in high society. Chloe can give me everything. You never could. Her father is worth billions, and he can turn my startup into an international brand." Without a shred of hesitation, he told me that my modest little job and my ordinary background were of no use to him anymore. He made it crystal clear that our engagement was over and that I needed to walk out of his life for good. Chloe looked me up and down. Her eyes were filled with a strange mix of arrogance and disgust. Taking in my worn-out coat and tired eyes, she let out a sharp, piercing laugh. Resting her hand on David's shoulder, she said, "David, you really should stick with people on your own level. This girl looks like some ordinary receptionist." David just smiled at her remark. In that moment, it felt as if someone had plunged a dagger deep into my chest. My breath hitched. I stood there, shivering. Over 3 years, I had given that man my everything, my time, my youth, my money, and my love. And here he was, publicly humiliating me and showing me my place. He left me standing there all alone amidst a sea of wealthy strangers, grabbed Chloe's hand, and walked out. Outside, they got into a brand new, ultra-expensive luxury car, likely a gift from Chloe, and vanished from my sight. That night, I walked all the way back to my small, freezing apartment. The biting blizzard slashed at my face, but the agonizing pain inside me was far more lethal than the cold. I went into my room and locked the door. An ordinary girl might have cried her eyes out that night, maybe contemplated ending it all, or perhaps called David, begging him to come back. But when you are discarded, simply because you don't have millions of dollars in your bank account, that kind of pain doesn't make you cry. Instead, it sparks a silent, raging inferno inside you, one with the power to burn everything to the ground. I looked at myself in the mirror. There were no tears in my eyes. There was only a cold, calculated fury. That very night, I erased David's name from my heart, forever, and turned my heartbreak into my ultimate weapon. I opened my laptop and completely buried myself in my work. For the next 6 months, I had only one goal in life: to become so successful and so powerful that no one would ever dare put a price tag on my worth again. I worked around the clock at my equity firm. I took on incredibly complex projects that even the senior partners shied away from. I devised brilliant strategies that brought the firm millions of dollars in profits. My bosses were so thoroughly impressed with my performance that they fast-tracked me straight to the position of senior director. I finally had the power, the prestige, and the status that David never understood. Meanwhile, David and his rich new girlfriend Chloe's lives were heading in a drastically different direction. Chloe's father had indeed pumped a fortune into the startup, but David simply didn't know how to run a business. He was all talk. The foundational structure I had meticulously built began to crumble under the weight of his incompetence. Chloe only cared about partying, going on lavish vacations, and flaunting her wealth on social media. She manipulated David into squandering company funds on their extravagant lifestyle. They rented an outrageously expensive office space, went on a senseless hiring spree, and blew all their capital on flashy marketing instead of actually improving the product. Without a solid strategy, their new product was an absolute flop. The company started bleeding money when Chloe's father realized his multi-million-dollar investment was going down the drain and that David was nothing but a fool with zero business acumen. He immediately pulled all his funding. David thought latching onto a rich heiress would make him a billionaire overnight, completely forgetting that investors expect returns. Without any financial strategy and without my guidance, David's dream castle collapsed, like a house of cards. His unpaid employees began walking out on him. Suppliers who were owed money filed lawsuits. In the blink of an eye, within just 6 months, the very company David had treated as his ultimate pride and joy was teetering on the edge of bankruptcy. He didn't even have the money to make rent for his office. There was only one last resort: to save his company from going completely under and to keep himself out of prison. Pitch a buyout to a massive investment firm and sell his company for pennies on the dollar. And this is exactly where fate and my timing played their most glorious masterstroke. David put his company up for sale on the market. Several firms rejected his proposal because the business was drowning in massive debt. However, my private equity firm specialized in acquiring heavily indebted companies. My boss reviewed the data for David's company and decided we would buy it for peanuts, and then liquidate its assets for a massive profit. And the best part? My boss appointed me to spearhead the entire buyout. He knew I never made mistakes on these kinds of deals. And that is how, 6 months later, I found myself sitting in that luxurious boardroom in the exact same city. When I pushed open those doors this morning and stepped inside as the new owner, the look on David's face was absolutely priceless. He jumped out of his chair as if he had just seen a ghost. His eyes widened in sheer disbelief, his jaw dropped, and he couldn't utter a single word. The woman who, just 6 months ago, was nothing but a poor, naive girl to him, was now here to buy his company, his dreams, and his arrogance. Throughout the entire meeting, I didn't look at him even once, with any hint of familiarity. I finalized the entire deal with the ruthless, strict demeanor of a complete stranger. My lawyers laid out terms that were entirely in our firm's favor. David had no choice but to accept them. If he didn't sign the deal, he was looking at serious jail time for fraud. Once all the legal paperwork was signed, the ink from my pen had dried, and all the other lawyers and executives had left the room. It was just David and me. David, who had been sitting frozen in his chair this whole time, suddenly stumbled toward me, trembling. Both his voice and his knees were buckling. All his ego, his arrogance, and his high society facade had completely vanished. With a pathetic, tear-stained face, he begged, "Emily, please forgive me. I made a colossal mistake. I was blinded by the greed for Chloe's money. I realize now that you were the real treasure, your brilliant mind, your hard work." He folded his hands, practically pleading with me to let him stay on as CEO of his own company. He confessed that when the company started sinking and the money dried up, Chloe had callously dumped him on the street and run off with another wealthy man. Sobbing, David told me that if I fired him, he would be out on the street, his career ruined forever, and he'd have nowhere to live. I calmly stood up from my chair. I tucked my expensive fountain pen back into the pocket of my suit. Buttoning my jacket, I looked him dead in the eye and spoke in a cold, icy voice, devoid of any pity or emotion. "David, there is no room for feelings, past relationships, or betrayal in the corporate world. You have become a massive liability to your own company. Not only did you flush the investors' money down the drain, but you also proved that you are completely incompetent as a leader. I paused for a second and then added, I can buy your company, David, but I cannot buy your greed, your stupidity, and your shallowness. My firm has no use for you anymore. You are hereby fired from the CEO position and permanently banned from this building, effective immediately. You have exactly 15 minutes to pack up your personal belongings and get out. If you don't leave voluntarily, I'll have security escort you out. David collapsed to his knees, right there on the floor, tearing at his hair. He was sobbing loudly and begging for mercy, but his words fell on completely deaf ears. I walked out of that room without glancing back even once. I stepped through the glass doors and made my way to the elevator. A little while later, I looked down at the street. From the large glass window of my office, David was being escorted out of the building by 2 security guards, clutching a small cardboard box containing a few personal items. He stood there, on the busy San Francisco street, utterly alone, empty-handed, and completely ruined. The man who had tried to dictate my worth had just been shown exactly where he belonged. And I did it without screaming, without yelling, and without shedding a single tear. In that moment, a profound realization washed over me. The sweetest, most glorious revenge isn't plotting to destroy someone. The greatest revenge is to silently keep walking your path, to elevate yourself so high and to move so far ahead in life that the people who betrayed you can't even dream of reaching your shadow, let alone pulling you down. What is yours will always remain yours. And time has a funny way of reminding those who try to show you your place exactly what their own place is. I didn't give up. I simply changed the rules of the game forever. Today, I am free, and I am incredibly proud of myself. If you are still listening to my story and have stayed with me until the very end of this journey, I would love to know which city you are watching this video from. Please drop the name of your city in the comments below. I read every single comment carefully, and it would bring me immense joy to know just how far my voice is reaching. If you enjoyed this story and want to hear more true, empowering, and heartwarming stories of life, don't forget to subscribe to BookBite Studio. Be sure to hit the like button so this video can reach even more people. Let's keep moving forward together on this beautiful and mysterious journey called life.